But I think the fact that there's so many people at this current state, there's so many people in the world, we're so far removed from the idea of ever being a community worldwide. Whereas back in, ages ago, they only knew of their immediate community.
Right. That. Oh, go. Did you want to say something, Chris?
No, I have no idea. I was just fucking with the camera.
All right. That was another thing that came up last time we talked. We kind of talked about how pivotal and how important, the post World War II world was for us specifically as Americans, because the infrastructure that we needed to make to get supplies all over the world at a minute's notice, we kept and privatized and turned into capitalism. And this whole idea of the world economy came from those building blocks that tied all of these different places together, because we needed to literally be all over the world with a military presence. But now we've established airfields and remote islands of the Pacific and all this stuff, right? I believe evolved into, and I also feel like that necessitated the entire Cold War, because and it also sort of gets into the question that you asked earlier, Chris, about compelling people to accept a state of life that they didn't really ask for or come up with by themselves. That's what that all was, more or less. Like the 50s to the 90s or whatever were two countries, two peoples with completely different ways of life, basically saying, if you're not with me, then you're with the other guy and we're going to blow you up. So you're with us. Or, and then basically making that conflict between two people that couldn't directly fight each other or we blow up the world. We forced all of these other people to do it. But that all, yeah, I think the professor was probably, I hope I'm in the right frame of reference here, but I'm pretty sure it was an idea from the Enlightenment, like the 1800s, which was a time when people were really stopping or allowing, especially religion, to directly impact every aspect of their lives.
Right.
So, I think we talked a little bit about Nietzsche a while back, just when we were texting, about how he was like, God is dead and we have killed him. It's about that time he wrote that book. And the idea was being like this idea of individualism and the idea that you can decide your morals and you can make educated decisions about your own life and the state that you live in or the culture that you live in is a secondary concern. And that sort of thing, in a nutshell, killed the gravitas, because it transcended religions. Everyone has a central figure, a creator of some kind, and they say that judgment is exact and we know what good and evil is. Individualism says not quite, and now we have no actual framework, no overall huge guiding one where everyone can agree on what's right and wrong.
Right. I also think that idea of being an individualist type person comes from abundance, because a lot of what religion was meant to, this could be controversial or not, but a lot of the things that people didn't have explanations for back in the Middle Ages and before that, they just said, they blamed on religion. The gods are angry, or God is angry. We have to do this. We have to do that. But once abundance started to come into play, people had more time to think about things and ponder. Like, I could have more, power than what's led on to believe.
Yeah, the Catholic Church became a massive societal power right after the Black Death, when 1 in 3 people in Europe died, and then everyone had pretty much the same issue on their minds of what makes life worth living. People drop dead every day, and we have to light them on fire in massive piles and stuff. And society sort of fell apart because of that, but it was the church that remained to be both, like, they had to deliver the mail. Like, they were the only force like that was strong enough to really keep people bound together. And the idea of living good lives and a lot of that was community driven specifically too, because that's how you get out of the crisis. You stop thinking about yourself and you figure out how to help the rest of your community, which is a really fun little parallel to the pandemic, I'd say. Because back in the day, we were convinced that we would close down for 2 weeks. And if everyone literally closed down for 2 weeks, it'd be over. And that might have been hopeful. But the way that people
I think it worked fine.
Yeah. Yeah. But the way that people went the exact opposite direction turned into what this was now. Like, in fact, right now, we have to contend with the fact that somewhere between 600 and 700,000 Americans have died of this. And people are still saying the same shit of like, oh, but 0.02%. And it's like, yeah, but those are supposed to be, at least in a little sense, someone that you ought to feel at least some sort of kinship with.
Right.
You don't have to be lovey-dovey with everyone. And in fact, the way that our country is set up is, even if you disagree with those people, you ought to still be able to shake their hand, because there are laws and there's an ethos that binds us all together and that sort of thing. But a lot of that, I think, got eroded.
I also think we have so much to worry about. Like, we talked about fear and how they try to manipulate and scare us and all this stuff. I think there's so much to worry about that people are like, 700, whatever.
I was just kind of going to say the same thing. Like, sorry to, like, tie back into, like, the last three things we talked about, but, like...
Oh, that's what we're here for.
Like, for starters, you were talking about, like, back in, like, the wars after World War II and stuff, and back then there was no internet, so it was kind of like everyone in the U.S., for the most part, generally speaking, like, had the same mindset, and it's like, this is our mindset, we want to impose it on the rest of the world. And then, like, now you have the internet where you kind of know all different corner of the world's mindsets, and it's like, it gets hard to draw the line on who's right and who's wrong and all these religions. And but like Antonio said, there's just so many things to care about that, like, eventually you just have to say, you know what, fuck it. Like, like, you buy a red car, people are going to say it should have been blue. You buy a blue car, people are going to say it should have been... Like, you're never going to please everyone. You're never going to always be right. So you kind of just say, whatever.